Okay, students, so now we're going to work on designing a checkerboard. Okay, so we're going to choose New to create a new file. We're going to call that file checkerboard. Okay, and let's give that a profile of wanting it for the web. Okay, that's pretty important. Okay, and the reason is that it will have certain attributes in terms of its color and how it fits to the pixel grid. So let's, for the width, choose 1024 by 768, okay, which is a very standard size, and we want that in pixels. Okay, and let's use a orientation of landscape. We want color mode to be RGB, okay, which was already chosen for us. 72 ppi, pixels per inch, was already selected for us. And make sure that Align New Objects to Pixel Grid is selected. That's important because that helps increase the sharpness of low-resolution graphics on the web. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll say OK to this. All right. And there's our artboard. Okay, so here we see our artboard. I'm going to choose Control-0 to fit it all into the window. Okay, and what you may want to do as you do this is make sure that you have certain panels opened up, such as the Align panel and so forth. For now, I think the Align panel and Color panel and so forth are just fine. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a square, okay, and that's the basis for our checkerboard. So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool and I'm going to click one time, and it's going to ask me pretty much how big I want this. I've already got this set up for 75 pixels, but in case you're doing it and following along, 75 pixels by 75 pixels. Okay, and we'll say OK to that. All right. Now what I can do is I can change the color. Like you saw in the previous lesson, we'll go ahead and we'll change the color of this. Okay, so let's choose a nice red. Okay, and as you can see with the web safe colors, you really only have certain choices. Okay, web colors really dramatically limit the color choices to make sure that they can be rendered on any device. Okay, so we'll say OK to that, and we'll double click on the stroke, and let's set that to a nice yellow color. All right, and let's increase the size of that stroke to 4 points. Okay, now what we'd like to do is zoom in on that a little bit. So let's grab the magnifying glass and let's grab a section about that big. Okay, now what we'd like to do is we'd like to copy that. Okay, so there are different ways you can do this. I personally just like to choose Control-C, and that copies it, and then choose Paste in Place, and then I use the arrow keys to move the copy over. Okay, now there are alignment tools that you can use for this. Okay, so you'll get your chance to use them in a moment. Okay, but what I'd like to do first, while I have that selected, is I'd like to change the color of the fill. Okay, so let's go with a nice black color. Okay, and now we have a red square and a black square. While I have that selected, what I'd like to do is I'd like to use the arrow keys to just nudge it over. Okay, and I want to make sure that that yellow of the one box overlaps the other yellow of the red box. Okay, so now we have those two, and that's kind of the basis of our checkerboard. Okay, what I'd like to do now is I'm going to come over just a little bit. Okay, let's hide this color panel. Okay, and I think I'll select those. Okay, and I can do that either by touching them using down the shift key, right? Or I can draw a marquee over them. That works fine. We can also draw a box all the way around them. Of course, this is all done with the selection tool, okay? And so I tend to just do that way. That's what I do. You can do whatever you want, okay? So I'm going to choose Control C, and I'm going to Control V, which is paste. Now notice it didn't paste in place. It didn't paste it right over the other object, okay? So instead what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure that my align panel, my align window is on, okay? And let's go ahead and let's align those to each other, okay? And so, but to do that, I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to choose Align to the top, okay? It could be aligned to the bottom, could be aligned any way you want them, just as long as they align, okay? Now what I'll do is I'll select those two boxes, and I'm going to use the arrow to move them over, okay? There we go. And I went just a little too far. It's not a big deal. I'll just nudge it on over with the arrow key, okay? And that's probably just right, okay? What I'd like to do now is hit Control 0 so that I can zoom out and see what I have, okay? Let's go ahead and do something different. We'll select all of them. We'll go to Object, and we'll go to Group. What that does is that makes them a group that when I grab them with the selection tool, I can move them all around at once. Okay, they're a group and they all kind of work together now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those. I'm going to Control C. I'm going to Control. Actually, let's paste in place. Okay, because I like to have one thing that I don't have to align. Okay, and I'm going to use the arrow keys to move those checkerboard boxes over, okay? Alright. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's nice and precise, okay? And when I get in close, like that, I can come in closer with the zooming tool, okay? And nudge them over with the arrows. Okay? Oh, one too far. Perfect. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control 0, and now I have the basis of my checkerboard. Okay? But checkerboards alternate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select both of those groups, and I'm going to group both groups. Okay, now both groups live in a single group. And when I select them, you can see they all select at the same time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control C and Control V, and now I have another bunch. Notice that when I come over here to one of the corners, I get a little rotation symbol. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the rotation symbol when I kind of just hover my mouse over there, hold down the shift key, and I'm going to just start pulling and rotating it. Okay, and by holding down the shift key, I get a nice precise rotation. Okay, I'm going to grab it and move it. All right, get it up into position. Okay. And I'm going to get my zoom tool, and I'm going to move these so that they line up nicely. Okay? Okay. So it looks like I'm running out a little bit of space, and I'm going to just grab it and move it so that it's perfect. Okay, now it has perfect alignment, and that, you know, sometimes you just have to grab something and move it, in Adobe Illustrator. So let's Control 0, and now we see we have a pretty large group. Okay, and so let's take those, and now we're going to group that group. Okay, we'll Control C, we'll Control V, and we have those pasted in. Again, we're going to come in close. We're going to see how our alignment is. We're going to grab one of them, and we're just going to move it right up next to the other. And of course, you can use the alignment tools for doing this, okay? But personally, I kind of like to do it by hand. You can go like that, sure, and you will get perfect alignment, okay? But when you're dealing with something that has a stroke around it, it can be a little bit tricky sometimes to move things by hand. Let's Control 0. Okay, we zoom back out, and we're almost there. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take that, we're going to group it, and by the way, you don't have to group all this stuff, but I recommend that you do. Otherwise, you can end up with a lot of different objects, and you get things out of alignment, and it introduces mistakes that you just don't need. So again, I'm going to Control C. I think this time I'm going to go ahead and Control V. All right, and get it close to position. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select that one. I'm going to select this one. I'm going to do a quick align. Okay, and then I'm going to deselect. All right, and move this one just so it's really, really close. Okay. Alright, there we go. Now Control 0. Okay, there is our checkerboard. Alright, so if we want, we can change the colors, we can do all kinds of things. Alright, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to make the checkers. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll choose the ellipse tool, which a circle is a type of ellipse. We're going to click one time in this box down here. We're going to say 50 pixels by 50 pixels. Okay, and there's our circle. Okay, I'm going to use the arrows to get it into a nice position, and I'm going to select, let's say, a light blue. Okay. Actually, let's for this one, let's use the medium blue. Okay. And that's good. And let's change the stroke to 2 points. Okay. So now we have the kind of checker that we want. Okay, and we're going to copy that. We're going to paste it. All right. And we're going to assemble this just like it's a checkerboard. Okay, so what I'll do now, I think, is I'll zoom in just a little bit on this checkerboard so I can get kind of as close as I can to those. Now what I'll do is I'll select one of those and I'll copy that. I'll paste it. Okay. Whoops. I just moved the whole thing. That's not a big deal. I'll just undo move. Okay. And your book talks about doing this in layers. You can certainly do a layer for the checkerboard. For a simple drawing like this, I'm not really too worried about doing layers. Okay. Layers can also be confusing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to click on each of those, and I'm going to copy them. Okay, so I have them selected. I'm going to Control C and Control V, and then I'm going to pull those into position. Okay. Now I have those selected. I'm going to select the other ones. Okay, and I'm going to Control C, Control V, and now I have those. Okay. So I've got half of the checkers that I need. All right. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to group them. So I'm going to just select them by holding down the Shift key, And you can see I get a bounding box, okay, around them as they're selected. You know that they're selected when they have that little dot in the middle, okay? And I'm going to group those, okay? Now I'm going to copy them and I'm going to paste them. But this time I'm going to rotate them, and there's our little rotation icon. You can see it out over here. It's not that easy to see over the red, but once I see the two arrows kind of in a curve, I know I've got rotation possible. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to rotate that whole thing. You can also use rotate command, but sometimes doing it by hand and being careful and learning to be good with your hands with Illustrator is really, really important. Okay, and for that one, I think let's choose a light blue fill. Okay, so we can say OK to that. All right, so that is the basic drawing as shown in your book. Okay, now what we could do is we could save this in any number of different file types. So we choose Save, and we can do all kinds of different things. Adobe Illustrator, a PDF, which is the standard for color proofing when you're going to print this and send something to a printer. The printer will want an PDF. EPS is great for going to a page layout program and having the fonts be included and so forth. You can have this be a template. And then SVG is a good file type for the web. Okay, for now we're going to choose Adobe Illustrator. Okay. Okay, students, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to use the magic wand tool. Okay, it's kind of fun because you just select the color, okay, and let's say we've got our swatches, okay, our color swatches, and we had, let's say we want to load in some different color palettes, such as earth tone. You know, this one's kind of cool. Okay, so we can just see what kind of colors are going along nicely with this. So let's go ahead and use brown for those. Okay, let's use the magic wand tool. Let's select those checkers and let's say that color. Okay, and then the red we would want to be orangish, and then the black would be kind of the purple. Well, looks like we went one too far. It's not really that good looking, and so we could go green. And as you can see now, I've got a color challenge. Okay, and so I'll choose that, and let's see what else we could have. Perhaps gray. Gray is a little too close to the color, okay, of the checkers. So I think that instead what I could do is, unfortunately, when I changed the color of these, I changed the color of the checkers and the checkerboard to two different. They were two different colors, and now they're the same. And so Magic Wand Tool can be a little bit tricky because you want it to select only colors that are different. Okay, and that's why I started having a little bit of difficulty with that.